Theory number 1. Pennywise as a viral idea, not a monster. Most fans think Pennywise is a monster that shows up, kills some kids, then goes back to sleep. This theory says that's backwards. Pennywise is less a creature and more a virus of belief. Look at how it operates. It feeds on fear, but it spreads through stories. Kids whisper about the clown in the sewers. Parents pretend not to remember. The more people talk, draw, and obsess over it, the stronger it becomes. Even when it isn't physically there, it's living rent-free in everyone's mind. In it, Chapter 2, Pennywise's power spikes once the losers remember their childhood. Remembering doesn't weaken it, it wakes it up. The Neibolt house, the red balloons, the carnival mirrors all feel less like physical locations and more like shared psychic spaces shaped by the group's memories. The theory argues that Pennywise is basically a mimetic parasite. It attaches itself to human thought and spreads through rumor, trauma, and storytelling. Kill the body and it comes back. Stop telling the story and it starves. That's why the real victory at the end isn't just beating the clown. It's refusing to pass the legend on. Theory number 2. The losers are literally chosen by the turtle. To most viewers, the Losers Club are just the unlucky kids who happen to cross paths with Pennywise. This theory says there's something else entirely. Cosmic counterweights chosen by a higher force. Stephen King's wider universe introduces Maturin, the ancient turtle who represents balance, patience, and creation. The films only hint at this, but the clues are there. The turtle in Ben's classroom, the toy in the quarry, the offhand "I think I stepped on a turtle" lines. They're throwaway moments, until you realize they always appear around turning points. The theory goes like this. Just as Pennywise is tied to destruction and fear, the losers are quietly guided by the opposing force. Why do they all just happen to be in Derry at the exact same time Pennywise is strongest? Why do they find each other despite different backgrounds, parents, and social circles? Why does their power only unlock when they're together? They aren't random victims, they're a deliberately assembled weapon. The losers are less a friend group and more a collective antibody, each bringing a different strength, belief, imagination, courage, empathy. Individually, they're prey. Together, they're the only thing in Derry that can push back against something that shouldn't exist. Theory number 3. Stan didn't give up. He broke the rules of the game. On the surface, Stanley Uris looks like the weakest of the group. He gets the phone call and kills himself. But this theory flips that completely. Stan didn't choose death out of fear. He chose it to rig the board in the loser's favor. In IT Chapter 2, the letter Stan leaves behind is framed as a tragic confession. He was too scared to return, but fans point out something odd. His decision feels unnaturally precise. He acts immediately after Mike's call. No delay, no hesitation, almost like he saw something the others didn't. The theory says Stan understood one thing no one else did. Pennywise counts on patterns. It wakes every 27 years. It expects 7 kids to return. It expects a certain configuration of fear, trauma, and sacrifice. Stan removes himself from that pattern. By taking his own piece off the board, he forces the game to change. Pennywise calculates its terror based on what it thinks is coming. Stan's death denies it that fear and collapses one entire branch of its plan. In that reading, Stan isn't the coward of the group. He's the one who chooses the only sacrifice that isn't on Pennywise's terms. Theory number 4. Mike as the damaged prophet, and maybe Pennywise's shadow. Mike Hanlon is the historian, the one who never leaves Derry, the one who remembers everything. But this theory pushes him into much darker territory. Mike isn't just the researcher, he's deeply warped by Pennywise's influence. Think about it. He spends 27 years alone in the most cursed town on Earth, surrounded by tragedy files, newspaper clippings, and the psychic residue of everything Pennywise has ever done. While the others escape and forget, Mike steeps in it. That's not research, that's exposure. In Chapter 2, Mike lies by omission, manipulates his friends with half-truths about the ritual, and literally drugs Bill to show him visions. It's not heroic behavior, it's obsession. The theory suggests that Pennywise doesn't just feed on fear, it leaves imprints on survivors. Mike, living closest to the source, becomes a kind of unwilling antenna. He sees more, but he's also more compromised. His visions, his truths, might be a mix of real history and seeded misinformation. In other words, Mike is both their greatest asset and their greatest risk. He's the only one who can lead them back to the monster, and the one most likely to walk them straight into a trap it designed. Theory number 5. Derry as a designed slaughterhouse. We all know Derry is a cursed town, but this theory goes further. Derry isn't just haunted by Pennywise, it was effectively built as its feeding farm. Look at the pattern. Derry's biggest tragedies, the ironworks explosion, the Black Spot fire, the Bradley gang, Adrian Mellon's murder, all happen in rhythm with Pennywise waking up. But the weird part isn't just the events, it's the response. The adults forget, the authorities look away, the town always moves on. This theory argues that the land itself has been tuned to Pennywise's needs. The waterways lead everything back to the sewers. The storm drains all converge toward its lair. The town's layout lets kids disappear without witnesses. Even the social culture, bullying, denial, abuse, keeps fear circulating constantly. It's like the town is an ecosystem optimized for one apex predator. There's also the idea that the founders of Derry, whether knowingly or not, built over the impact site where Pennywise arrived, turning that thin spot in reality into a permanent settlement. Over time, the town and the monster became symbiotic. Derry thrives economically as long as people keep turning a blind eye. The price of that prosperity? A sacrifice of children every generation. Theory number 6. The adults are already compromised. One of the creepiest parts of IT isn't Pennywise, it's the adults. The pharmacist who pretends not to notice Beverly's bruises. The driver who doesn't stop when Ben is attacked. The librarian who floats through scenes like nothing is wrong. This theory says that's not bad parenting or small-town apathy. It's long-term psychic damage from living near Pennywise. Instead of terrifying adults directly, Pennywise uses them as insulation. It nudges their perception just enough that they don't see what's in front of them. They misremember, rationalize, or emotionally disconnect from horror happening in plain sight. That's why kids see balloons and clowns where adults see nothing. Over time, this numbing mutates into something worse: complicity. If you're an adult in Derry, you've likely spent decades having your empathy dulled, your concern redirected, your memory blurred. You become easier to manipulate and less likely to intervene. The theory argues that adults in Derry aren't neutral background characters. They're half possessed by apathy, the perfect shields behind which Pennywise can operate. That's why only children can fight it at full strength. They haven't been worn down by decades of quiet psychic erosion. Theory number 7. Bill as an unconscious reality writer. In most horror stories, the leader kid is just braver than the rest. In IT, this theory argues Bill is something else, a subconscious reality editor whose imagination literally shapes how the battle plays out. Bill's power has always been storytelling. He creates worlds on the page, rewrites outcomes, and reframes tragedy. The theory suggests Pennywise fixates on him because his belief is uniquely dangerous, not just emotionally, but metaphysically. Look at how things shift when Bill commits to an idea. The group's first real stand against Pennywise happens after Bill insists they can hurt it, and suddenly they do. Later, when he screams, "You're just a clown," the creature's physical form literally weakens as the group's perception changes. Pennywise feeds on belief in its legend. Bill learns almost accidentally to rewrite that legend out loud. His stutter is key here. It shows up when he's unsure, when guilt is in control, when his confidence locks in, his speech smooths out, and reality seems to tilt in his favor. Words become weapons. The theory says Bill is, in a small way, doing what Pennywise does, bending reality through narrative. The difference is that Pennywise uses fear. Bill uses conviction. Theory number 8. Pennywise's end isn't really an ending. Finally, there's the most unsettling theory of all. Pennywise doesn't truly die at the end of Chapter 2. Not completely, it just loses its shape. If Pennywise is, at its core, a multiversal predator made of fear, memory, and belief, then destroying its physical manifestation is more like shattering a shell than killing the organism. The losers weaken it by refusing to see it as a god, forcing it into something smaller, something mortal, something they can tear apart. But energy doesn't vanish. Stories don't either. The theory argues that when Pennywise collapses in its lair, its essence doesn't disappear, it scatters. Little fragments of fear seed themselves into other places, people, and legends. Maybe not as a clown, not as a spider, not even as deadlights, but as new myths that grow in fresh soil. Any town that looks the other way. Any group of kids who start swapping stories about something in the dark. Any place where fear becomes ritual. Those are all potential new Derrys. In that sense, the losers didn't kill it, they just delayed it. They broke one mask, in one town, in one lifetime. The real question the theory leaves hanging is simple and terrifying. If Pennywise is a pattern, not a monster, how sure are we that it's really gone? Theory number 9. Pennywise isn't a predator. He's a judge of humanity. Most fans see Pennywise as a monster that devours children. But this theory argues something far darker. Pennywise doesn't kill because he's hungry, he kills to evaluate humanity. Throughout both films, Pennywise singles out very specific children. Kids who are isolated, bullied, abused, ignored, or emotionally abandoned, the ones adults fail to protect, the ones Derry looks away from. Notice the pattern. Georgie was unsupervised on a stormy street. Betty Ripsome walked home alone with no one noticing. Eddie was psychologically crushed by a mother who used fear as control. Patrick was a violent sociopath shaped by a violent home. Adrian Mellon was murdered while adults stood by. Pennywise doesn't attack at random. It targets the places where humanity has already failed. The theory suggests Pennywise is a cosmic filter, removing the weakest points in a community's moral structure. Not weakest children, weakest systems, abusive parents, negligent towns, corrupt cops, apathetic neighbors. In this interpretation, Pennywise is less a monster and more a manifestation of consequences. A supernatural force that wakes every 27 years to expose Derry's decay. It doesn't just feed on fear. It feeds on society's failure to protect its own and punishes the town accordingly. This redefines the losers not as lucky survivors, but as the first generation of kids capable of standing up to the judgment itself. Theory number 10. The losers didn't just defeat Pennywise, they broke its entire multiversal cycle. Most viewers assume Pennywise dies at the end of Chapter 2. But this theory suggests something way bigger happened. The losers accidentally collapsed Pennywise's entire extra-dimensional food chain. Here's why. Pennywise isn't unique. In Stephen King's mythology, creatures like Pennywise exist across multiple universes, shape parasites that feed on fear and survive by taking forms from human imagination. Most of them operate in endless loops. Wake, feed, sleep, repeat. But the losers did something no other prey has ever done. They didn't overpower Pennywise physically. They didn't use weapons or rituals. They didn't even use the Chüd correctly. They humiliated it. Across all universes, Pennywise's entire identity depends on being worshipped through terror. When the losers mocked it, belittled it, and stripped away its myth, they destroyed more than the clown, they shattered the concept of Pennywise. A fear-based entity cannot survive the absence of belief. The theory argues this didn't just kill the Pennywise in Derry. It rippled outward, destabilizing every version of it in other worlds. Pennywise variants weakened, its feeding cycle disrupting, its psychic network severed, its mythological ecosystem collapse. The losers didn't just end a monster, they ended the idea of Pennywise as a cosmic predator. That would mean their victory wasn't local, it was multiversal. For the first time in countless cycles, a Pennywise died permanently. If you enjoyed diving into these twisted theories, there's a lot more where that came from. Stick around, the next horror breakdown might just change the way you see your favorite villains forever. Remember to hit the subscribe button and see you in the next video.